Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here with my husband, Corey. This video is gonna have a lot of different pieces to it. I kind of just want to put it all in one video and not just kind of make a few different videos. Like, why not just give you all everything at once? So in this video, we want to talk about our third trimester, touch on our birth story a little bit, and then also introduce you to our baby boy. You may hear the air conditioning in the back. Typically I would cut it off, but due to the fact that we have a little person living here, I'm gonna keep the air conditioning on to keep him comfortable. So he's like kind of asleep. I'm not sure how far we're gonna get into this video, but yeah, I'm just gonna try and keep a good pace. Starting at the 28th week, which I believe is the beginning of the third trimester, that is when we had our baby shower, and we did our baby shower in Chicago. My family is from Chicago, but I also had some family come from Houston. Some family come from Sacramento. I feel like that's it. And then your family came from?
Yeah, my family came from the Atlanta area. My sister and her husband live just over the border in Alabama, but my family was generally coming from the Atlanta area.
Yeah, so we had family fly in and we all did it in Chicago. So yeah, that was the last time that we traveled during the pregnancy. And I personally am glad that we did the baby shower earlier because, one, we were able to receive all the gifts sooner. So that I was able to set up the nursery sooner, and we weren't waiting for like different things and gifts super late into the pregnancy. And also I had a lot of energy at that point. So yeah, we had a really good time. It was very small. It was basically all family and very intimate, which is exactly what I wanted. I definitely did not want like a social media baby shower with spending hundreds and thousands of dollars on decorations. No, I just wanted to focus on having good food and just spending quality time with our families. And it was nice to see everybody and have that moment like in the beginning of the third trimester. And it was also Mother's Day weekend. So I was able to be with my mom, he was able to be with his mom, and it was extra special.
Yeah, it was pretty special. Like for me, it's not often that my immediate family like travels to any one place together, especially now that my siblings and I are all adults and kind of just doing our own thing. So that was pretty special to have them all in one place and just be able to kind of celebrate pregnancy together as well. Baby shower food was really good too.
Yeah,
I think the food was really good.
Yeah, I'll put down below the caterer that we use, Black owned business, friend of my brother's, so really good. Yeah. I put a lot of money towards the food, you know, the desserts, everything like that, and not so much towards the decorations. I just had a little area where I got some decorations, balloons, just so it was like a good photo op. And that's really all you need. Like the whole space doesn't have to be like picture perfect. Like just get a little area where you can take some pictures and put your money towards food. I mean, if you're anything like me. So for week 28, that's when I first started feeling hiccups. Week 29, I wrote that I had an insatiable appetite, feeling more fatigued. Snoring started to kick in. And that's something that you noticed. Yeah,
definitely. There was definitely snoring. Just little differences here and there. Snoring was one for sure.
Yeah, I'm not a snorer. So week 30. Oh, and then we had an ultrasound week 29. So at that point we realized that he was head down, kind of like curled up onto the right side of my stomach. And he stayed like that all the way until delivery. So he's the type of person who gets comfortable and just wants to be in that exact position. Okay, so week 30, I put heartburn, moody, especially when creating content, because during that time I started like bulk creating some content for like a Kohl's partnership that I had. I put big body. I must have been feeling really big. Feeling more pressure in my pelvis, and we interviewed our pediatrician that week, which was great. Definitely recommend interviewing your pediatrician in advance so that when the time comes, you already have that squared away and it's one less thing to think about. Week 31, Corey says I'm stingy with food.
It's a big shift. I feel like we've talked about this a little bit before, but Leah eats in such a way where I can anticipate finishing her plate. So I can, eat and order accordingly, knowing that I'll probably have to help polish hers off at some point. That script flipped. Okay. It got to the point where I had to start accommodating my order because after Leah finished hers, she was coming for mine.
I'm like,
all right. So,
are you done with that?
Yeah, a little ravenous.
Very, very ravenous.
It's about the time Leah started asking, instead of saying like, oh, I wonder if they have teriyaki salmon, it's like, where's the ribs? So she definitely turn the corner there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've never gone out for ribs, and then I eat the ribs, the wings, brisket,
Cornbread,
anything
mac and cheese.
And then I would not get full. Like in normal life, I get full. In pregnancy, no. It's like we would eat and we'd leave, and I'd be like, "So what's for dinner?"
Yeah, definitely.
That's a joke we always say, but I actually meant it. Week 32, I put eating more, difficulty getting full. 33, feeling movement that feels like limbs rather than just small jabs. I would say the movements were like one of the most exciting parts of the third trimester because you start to feel like just the body wiggling and stuff, and it's just more intense.
I think Leah would feel a certain amount of joy when he would move. It usually make her laugh, and she'd want me to try to, feel the kicks and movements and rolls and stuff too. So it seemed to be something she enjoyed.
Yeah, brought me a lot of joy. Week 34, hiccups about once a day. So with the hiccups, it was cool because I could verify where he was. So every day he would hiccup and it would be in the same spot. So it just like verified to me that he's still in the same spot. He hasn't moved, he hasn't like turned, and he's still in the optimal position. So that was like nice confirmation. It was also cute to feel his hiccups, and you could feel them as well.
Yeah.
Week 35, I put fingers and toes feel tight, more swollen. Movements are getting extremely strong. Week 36, fingers and toes swollen. Melasma, I felt like my neck was starting to get darker. I woke Corey up by snoring. We had an ultrasound that week, and baby was 6 pounds 4 ounces based on like their measurements, although it's not necessarily accurate. And then I was feeling more Braxton Hicks. So week 37, hiccups 1 to 2 times a day. Week 38, a ton of energy, meal prepped pasta. At that point I was doing more like from scratch baking, organizing the whole house. Like everything was good. Like we had the nursery done, decluttered. We had just gone to the grocery store. I had a ton of energy to like start cooking and just how to like pass the time, because I don't like to just sit around idly like, okay, any day now, baby. Like I felt really good. Like, and throughout the whole third trimester, we were still going to the gym, still lifting. Obviously, like I wasn't lifting as much, but
yeah, I mean, I would say like practically speaking, the third trimester was kind of like the calm before the storm. It's a lot going on during the third trimester, but by the end of it, you feel like you finally are like, okay, pregnancy is squared away. When you think of a pregnant person, that's what Leah started to look like, right? Because for a lot of the time, she just kind of looked regular with maybe a little extra belly or whatever. But now she's looking, acting, walking, eating like a pregnant person, snoring like a
man, a grown man,
like a lumberjack. But no, I mean, it's just so like, but everything gets set up for us. Everything's kind of squared away, and now you're just like, it almost feels like how maybe pregnancy would be like in the movies, where it's just pregnant and it's a nursery, like where that kind of stuff is just like, it's consistent, like calm before the storm. The baby's not here yet, but if it was, no big deal. I mean, more than a deal of just having an actual baby.
It's crazy looking at you because I just see him now. I see the baby. Y'all gonna see him soon, but it's crazy.
Yeah, I know we're not talking about that yet, but man, what a blend.
It is a blend. He's a blend of both of us.
He is definitely a blend. That is crazy. So continuing on.
Yeah, so all in all, third trimester, high energy, still exercising, still feeling really good, still sleeping well, even took on snoring as my new hobby, like living my best life.
Yeah. Because in the third trimester, you're not really limited. Everything's still kind of the same for the most part, right? The baby's is being kind of taken care of or more or less self-sufficient in the womb, so you don't have to like take care of the baby. Other than like maneuvering the bump, a lot of things for us was the same. Obviously you're preparing for a baby to come in, but they're not here yet, so you're having to
just wait
and just kind of chill and do the things that you would normally do.
Yeah, so that's basically the third trimester.
Yeah.
I found a lot of joy in being active. I felt like that was really good for my mental health. Just like we would walk to the gym, like half a mile each way.
I mean, we worked out to the bitter end.
Yeah,
well, to
honestly,
the sweet end.
Yeah, we worked out even the day that it all started, right?
We worked out the day it all started. I know that's kind of the next part, so
yeah.
I don't know how we get into that.
That's the third trimester. Now we're going to transition into the birth story. We'll keep it brief. I will start by saying, like, the birth story did not go how we planned. Even, like, as far as a plan B, it didn't even go as far as a plan B. Like, it was just a wrench, just one little wrench that threw everything off.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
But I mean, we knew that could happen. Like, you kind of make your own plans and you just kind of see what happens. What's the verse?
Oh, a man's heart plans his way, but the Lord determines his steps.
Yeah. So we knew that, like, with our plans and intentions, they could very much so not happen.
Yeah, I think for us, I would say the theme of our birth story was just trust. When you have a birth plan, there's a lot of things that you want to go your way, right? The ideal scenario, this is how it would be. This time frame, this way, in this place, all those things. But what we realize is we have to trust the Lord. Because if you end up with a different doctor than you wanted, a different midwife than you wanted, you're trusting that God is allowing these things to happen in such a way to bring about his ultimate sovereign will, ultimately to work out for your good, even if things don't go the way you want to. So we really try to go through the birthing process in a way that wasn't kind of making our own way. When you're in the medical space, you do have to advocate for yourself. You do have to speak up. You do have to be firm sometimes. And we found ourselves having to do all that. But you also have to trust God and allow him to let things go according to his will, because you only really have so much control anyway.
So towards the end of the pregnancy, you get tested for GBS, which is group B strep. And I think 20 to 30% of pregnant women have it. It's one of those things where there's nothing you can do to prevent having it or getting it. You either kind of have it or you don't. So you get tested for it, I think around 36 weeks. And if you do have the GBS bacteria, then basically whenever you go into labor or whenever your water breaks, you have to receive penicillin via IV every 4 hours throughout your labor. So it protects the baby from getting the bacteria. So it's very common, and that is something that I tested positive for at 36 weeks. Honestly, I had no complications throughout the whole pregnancy. I was good with gestational diabetes. My blood pressure was good, everything. So at 36 weeks to have the GBS bacteria, it was kind of like a wrench in the plans, but it really would only pose like a immediate risk if my water broke before going into labor. So if you go into labor and when you're in active labor and you go to the birth center, then they just give you the IV every 4 hours while you're there. But if your water breaks first, that is what really can throw everything off. And from my understanding, it's very uncommon, despite what you see in like movies and television, for a woman's water to break before having any contractions, before being in labor, just to break on its own. So
yeah, and the issue being obviously when the water breaks, that amniotic sac seal is broken, and then that just opens up opportunity for bacteria infection to enter into the baby's personal space, which is what was attempted to be avoided.
What happened with us?
So it all started regular, right? Kind of one of those see what had happened was type of scenarios where everything was going normal. Like I said, that third trimester, we're kind of in chill mode, calm before the storm. We wake up, go to the gym, we're lifting weights, working out the way we typically do. I go into work that day and I'm in a meeting I was in person, but also on Zoom in a meeting. And I get a text from Leah.
I think I was like, I think my water broke, but IDK.
Right. And this is, not necessarily cause for alarm at this point, because, we've been reassured, hey, for a first time mom, you're typically not going to see any action until maybe a week and a half after your due date. And we are on the other end of that. We're like a week and a half, or 2 weeks before.
No, like a little over a week. So we were 30, over a week. Yeah, 38 weeks and 4 days when my water broke. Yeah.
So, long story short, I kind of rushed home. And as I'm in the process of rushing home, the information Leah's updated me with, it makes it pretty apparent her water indeed has broken.
Yeah, but it wasn't like a huge gush. It was more so like I was laying on the bed on my phone and I heard like a little noise. And I knew that some people can hear a noise when it comes to their water breaking. But I heard a little noise and then I just felt a little something, but it wasn't like a huge gush. So yeah, I'm like, it's giving water just broke. But everyone was saying like, oh, like he said, like you're not gonna go into labor until past your due date, and people with GBS, their water doesn't usually break. So basically everything that they said wouldn't happen is what was happening, which is fine because it's not a one size fits all. So Corey came home, I called the midwife, and as soon as your water breaks, if you have GBS, you have to start getting like the IV. So for us, we have to go every 4 hours.
Yeah, so essentially what happened for us once that happens is we start this clock where every 4 hours Leah has to get this antibiotic. It's delivered to her via an IV. So she has to get the IV set up. I think it was in your hand.
No, they put it in my arm because they blew the vein out in my hand.
They tried her hand, they tried her wrist, they tried 3 other spots. On the 4th spot, they get it in the wrist, and she gets this.
It hurt
IV
so
put in.
bad.
It was a little difficult.
All
for
those
Leah.
times.
And so she gets this IV attached. She gets her first round of antibiotics, and it's 4 hours before she has to get the next one. And so we travel home.
40 minutes each way.
40 minutes each way. We take a quick nap, and we come back. So this process happened for us at like 8 p.m., 12 a.m., 4 a.m., and 8 a.m. So between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m., the day Leah's water broke, we're taking commutes every couple of hours back and forth to the birth center so she can get these antibiotics. So we're off already to somewhat of an unexpected start. That was taking us through the night, kind of draining some of the energy that we already had. But again, our goal is just to do the next step and continue trusting.
Right. But it was exhausting and it drained all of our energy because by the time we got home, we could only sleep for maybe like 30 minutes to an hour. And it was a lot driving back and forth and not knowing what's going to happen. Ideally, my body would have just kicked into labor. And I think they said if it didn't within like, was it like 16 hours?
Within 16 hours.
Within 16 hours, I'd have to be induced and go to the hospital.
Right.
So best case scenario, my body would have just jumped into active labor and we could have had the birth at the birth center, but it didn't. So we ended up having to go to the hospital. With the birth center that we were using, the midwives also practice at the hospital. So we knew that if we ended up in the hospital, our midwife would still be there. So it wasn't a horrible second, like plan B. And I knew that could happen. So yeah, so when we went around like the 8 a.m. time frame, we just went to the hospital. I wasn't in active labor. And yeah, just completely went down a different trajectory. Yeah. So when we ended up going to the hospital, I had to be induced, which is definitely not what I wanted. I wanted to do an unmedicated birth. So for the whole day when we're driving back and forth and I'm starting to get contractions, but I'm not in active labor, not on any medicine. When we went to the hospital, I was not on any medicine for the majority of the time. And I was in excruciating pain. And ultimately my midwife told me after the fact that like when you get induced and you're put on that medication, you're not dealing with just your normal, natural contractions and pain. It's that like multiplied greatly because you're on medicine that's like forcing your body into labor versus just allowing your body to gradually be in labor. So my body obviously wasn't ready to be in labor yet. It's just that my water broke. So the contractions and everything was like extremely painful because it was just on another level.
For reference, we get to the hospital around 8 a.m. It's not even until maybe 11:30 or so where she's even in position, like kind of all her preliminary testing and measurements have been taken. We're kind of in the room we're supposed to be in, kind of have all this stuff squared away. And the contractions were picking up, but they weren't consistent and intense enough to really indicate like, okay, we're ready to roll. So as time continues to tick on, Leah starts to get hungry. She sends me to go get lunch. I mentioned that because it gives you a sense of like how she was feeling. She was feeling really good, like really communicative. The contractions were just very manageable. And so I went to go get her lunch, brought that back, and everything was kind of going according to plan. Once she got induced, especially with that second medication, it just took what would typically be happening and just intensified it a lot. And so at that point, things started moving, I would say, quicker.
Yeah. So just to speed through like the traumatic aspects of it, because it's not really something I've talked much about and don't really feel like talking about it in much more detail. But yeah, it was really hard, very painful, excruciating, long, probably the worst pain in my life. But I do find some solace in knowing that like natural childbirth wouldn't be as bad. Because I mean, I was handling the contractions prior, but when they took it up a notch and up another notch, it was just too much.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, it intensified to the degree where Leah crossed that threshold from being in pain to being in suffering.
Yeah.
While all at the same time, those contractions, according to the medical standards, were not like consistent and intense enough to really justify considering her in active labor. I think the medical professionals we were working with were kind of a bit of a step behind in the sense of not really anticipating how far along she was at the time she was there.
Yeah, so basically they thought I wasn't as far along as I was, and they didn't want to check me because they didn't want to put more, like, they didn't want to introduce bacteria with the GBS, so they didn't want to check me a second time, but the pain I was feeling was horrible. And I ultimately ended up like opting for an epidural. And then after I got that, they checked me and realized I was like 9.5 centimeters. So basically all the way there, and like basically all the way effaced. So I had progressed fully to the most part.
Right.
With no medication, and with no pain medication.
Right.
Yeah.
The midwives and nurses were assuming Leah to be maybe halfway to that point. But she was all the way to that point, right? So that kind of helped us make more sense of, because I think the tension was, it seems as though you're having really intense contractions, but you're not far along enough to be having them to be that intense for this to really be game time. But it was just somewhat of a misunderstanding. Like, she was far enough. You know what I'm saying? Her body was responding to the natural motivators in addition to the induction, and she was ready to rock.
Right. So after that, conversations changed. And it was more so like, okay, you're gonna have to start pushing soon.
Right.
But I was proud of myself for making it that far to the labor without the medicine. I was disappointed because I wanted to go completely unmedicated. And when you have to be induced and you have to like go more of a medical route, options become more limited. But like he said, I was starting to feel as though I was suffering, and I didn't want to suffer. So once I made the decision to take the epidural, I felt a lot better. And I felt like I was able to salvage my birth story to not just be like extremely traumatic. But I mean, Corey was there. He knows how I was feeling. He knows what it was. And it was horrible.
It's hard because, even in the context of Black maternal health as it relates to childbirth and things like that, you want to advocate and you want to speak up. And but at the same time, Leah had her own personal desires to go as natural as possible. So for me as a husband, I'm sitting here trying to balance like making sure Leah's heard, because I feel like at a certain point she didn't feel heard and didn't feel as though the room was responding to her in the way they should. But at the same time, it's like, you also want to try to go as far as you can without intervention. But at the same time, when intervention is needed or requested, that should be listened to as well. So I'm trying to balance between helping her to achieve the goals she wants to achieve, while also being safe, while also being supportive, while also being, everything, right? To be, warm, but to also be strong, right? So it's both. And I think that's, it's a really interesting balance. And obviously seeing Leah in pain is not easy, but it's to some degree to be expected. So to what degree is this typical pain that is natural that she should be feeling? To what degree is this pain an indicator that something's going wrong or something else needs to be done? And it's hard to know.
And the way I described it to them is like, I felt like I was sitting on a knife, and they're like, okay, well, try to move this way, move that way. I'm like, I feel like I am moving from side to side with a knife inside of me. And after they checked me again, I felt like they were able to see like, oh, that level of rectal pressure has to do with the baby descending. But at that time when I expressed it, it wasn't kind of like perceived that way, Yeah,
because they're looking at all these different factors. And it did seem as though at some points, Leah's voice, perspective, intuition as a mother was one of the least impactful indicators, where it's like, well, we're looking at this number, we're looking at this, we're looking at the time, we're looking at the calendar. Again. And it's like, when she was saying, and so I say all this to say, like, when you're in that space, you do have to trust your body. And even more than that, you have to trust in the Lord, right? If you're getting, as a husband, as a wife, that motivation, that indicator, that push, even if it doesn't make sense, it's best you speak up. You know what I'm saying? Because had the doctors like, well, we're just giving this, we're going to let her go another 6 hours, that would have been bad. And that could have had really bad consequences, you know, to do things a certain way without really listening to your body, listening to the voice within your body that we know to be the Holy Spirit, and really trusting in that. And then also you have to trust the medical professionals as well.
Right.
I can't
It's a balance.
It's all of it. It's a balance.
But I feel like you did a good job, Corey.
Yeah.
He was like my doula, helping me with movement and pain management and advocating, and you know, I was able to tell him how I felt and like, no, like I can't go on like this.
Yeah.
So yeah. So my midwife was saying, like, in the future, if we have another kid and things go more the way they should naturally go, where you go into labor and your water breaks more naturally, and you know, your body is able to be on its own timeline, she thinks I could still have a natural birth. She's like, you definitely have what it takes to have an unmedicated birth, but given the circumstances of what happened, you didn't really get a fair shot at it because of how intense the medications to induce are. That's what she said. So it gave me some hope for the future, to if we do have another child, like maybe I could still have a birth center birth. But given the circumstances, you know, going to the hospital, it wasn't like a fail to me. The hardest part was getting the epidural because I didn't want it initially. But after I got it, I did feel really, really, really good. I felt like back to myself, and I felt like I was able to like salvage the birth story, because I knew like the labor was not ideal. I didn't enjoy it. It was horrible. But when I got the epidural, I knew like, okay, the birth, there's still hope. So I felt like I made the right decision.
In hindsight, if Leah would have had to birth in the conditions she was laboring in, she would have had a much less memorable, less enjoyable experience.
Yeah. So yeah, ultimately, from there, we started pushing and pushed for like an hour and 15 minutes. Yeah. So Corey was down there. He caught the baby.
Yeah.
Cut the cord. You were given some really good like instruction. You know, it's
Let
almost.
me just say this, man. As it pertains to labor, as it pertains to birth, I understand medical professionals. I understand this is a woman's time to really allow, you know, God's nature to flow through her body. Like this is a very like woman focused thing, as it should be. But as a husband, as a father, you still have to lead. Like for me, like if I was to say, oh, give some advice to anybody else in the same scenario, it'd be willing, prepared to lead. Like be listening, be paying attention, be on it. Like, you know, because
you don't have to be a passive dad.
Yeah, don't be passive. You know what I'm saying? Don't take the back seat. This is the time. Like if you ever going to stand up and lead, now is the time. You know, this is a big pivotal time, because at the end of the day, if I got to walk out of this hospital without my wife, I got to walk out of this hospital without my child, I want to know I did everything, left everything on the table, left everything on the field to get my family where they needed to be. You know what I'm saying? So that did take me studying on the front end. It took me being present during there and be ready to, you know, do what I had to do. You know what I'm saying? And so, and I enjoyed it. You know what I'm saying? It ended up being a really beautiful experience. And so the pushing, like Leah said, an hour 14 minutes of getting after it, like straight getting after it. And so I did have the opportunity to really kind of listening to Leah's body, understanding the body in general, given my line of work, and listening to the medical professionals doing the research to make suggestions while Leah was pushing. Like I would say I was probably the most vocal person in the room, like coaching, not just like emotional
like move
support,
your legs
but like
this way.
Support. I'm telling the nurses, hey, turn that leg out. Like we need those knees together, feet out. Like let's try it this way. Let's do that. I'm giving Leah indicators on how to push, where to push. You know what I'm saying? How to breathe, like what to do in between pushes. And it really helped me feel more involved. And I think it helped Leah feel more comfortable knowing like, hey, this is just like if we're at home talking through something. This is just like if we're at the gym, right? You can trust that you're okay. This is comfortable. This is familiar. We're just doing something a little different, you know? And it was crazy.
They were impressed with like my pushing capabilities, but it's kind of like took me to the place in the gym where you just kind of focus, get through it, breathe, reset, focus, get through it, breathe, reset. So I would say, they were saying I was a very efficient pusher.
Very efficient. Like from the first push, Leah was pushing exactly where she needed to. And I know it might seem like, well, yeah, like how hard could it be? But if you've done it, then you know. If you haven't done it, you know, you'll most likely find out. But that's where that mind to muscle connection that we talk about in the gym is so important, because it feels like we'll just push. But a lot of times you're pushing with your face or your neck, or you're just really holding your breath, or you're squeezing your whole body, or your hands or your arms or your abs, and it's like, this is something different, you know? So being able to get there was really impressive, the way Leah was able to just kind of dial in, push what she needed to push, as long as she needed to push, and the way she needed to push. So it was a really powerful moment, I would say.
Yeah, and then our baby was born.
Yeah, and like Leah said, I was able to be down, because be down in the ground zero, right? And to be able to watch the progress of the baby, you know, getting closer and closer to birth, being able to have my hands out and be the first two hands that catch and hold my son, and be able to deliver him right over to Leah, for her to hold and to skin and all that stuff. And then, of course, you know, hit that cord, and then we kind of off to the races from then. Yeah.
So we ended up staying in the hospital for, I think, like 2 nights, which ended up being really nice in hindsight, because we were able to get a lot of hands-on help from the nurses as first-time parents. And I think that was one of the benefits from ending up being in the hospital, getting a lot of help. The pediatrician was able to come there and see him. So that was nice. When we came home, the next day we took him to an appointment, found out that he had jaundice. So we ended up in the emergency room with him for a few more nights. Not in the ideal hospital that like is my preference, the one that was like 40 minutes away. Just did a more local hospital. Experience was not like the best, but you know, we're able to kind of like help him clear out that jaundice. But it was a lot of doctor's appointments, a lot of blood work for him, a very like shaky start in the beginning, because we're staying in the hospital. He's having to be in a little incubator with a diaper, blindfolded, no clothes, you know, just not a good start. You know, so it was tough for us, obviously. But now we're home and things are better. And I would say it's probably like, a week and a half postpartum at this point. So definitely more tired than we typically would be. But we're doing good. The baby's doing well. And we're just all like acclimating to our life and new normal.
Yeah.
So, and as far as postpartum goes, I'm doing pretty well. It's just
that might have to be another video. Yeah. Early days and postpartum.
Yeah. Let us know if you want a video about postpartum. But
I think it's about time y'all meet this baby.
Here comes the baby. So this is our baby boy. He's a mix of both of us. But sometimes he's giving more Corey, sometimes he's giving more me. It just really depends. But this is our baby, Elijah.
And I'm sure there'll be some overlays with some little pictures or video
yeah, I'll pop up
clips
some pictures
so you can see him a bit better. But we just wanted y'all to see him with us, our little family unit that's been expanded since the last time we've been on.
Yeah, he's hungry. So we're gonna have to cut this so I can feed him. I've been exclusively breastfeeding, by the way, so that's been fun. But yeah, this is our little baby.
Yeah, we just ultimately feel, man, blessed to have him. We love him, and we just look forward to, you know, all the little parenting lessons and things we'll experience along the way with him. So glad y'all had our opportunity to meet him, and you'll be seeing a little more of him here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, head over to Instagram if you want to see some of the pictures. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and feed him because he's hungry.
He is.
But yeah, this is our baby, Elijah Lee Dixon, and he's a little over a week old. That's our story. So I hope that y'all enjoyed this video. It's a little bit more of like a compilation, but I figured that'd be like the best way to tell the whole story. Oh. But yeah, y'all, that is everything. I think all in all, the biggest takeaway is like, we can make our plans, but ultimately the Lord orders our steps. So I think like choosing to trust in him, choosing to focus on the good, it's not always easy, but it is possible through him, you know. And you know, sometimes we have ways that we want things to go in so many different capacities, and life doesn't always turn out that way, but it doesn't mean that your end story cannot be beautiful. And just trust God, and no matter what it is that you're going through, that he ultimately will have the final say. And if the path doesn't look how you thought it would, it doesn't mean that you still can't get to the beautiful ending in your own story. So yeah, I hope that y'all enjoyed this video and getting to meet our little baby. But yeah, I'm gonna end it here because I gotta go feed him. He's at the point where he's eating like every 2 hours. So yeah, I'm glad we were able to like get everything into this video. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I look forward to seeing y'all in my next one. Bye.